Last week we finished up with Lesson 5, and so tonight we're going to begin with Lesson 6 in the book. It's on page 28 on the newer books, but a separated people. And as our book points out at the very beginning, God has always required that his people be a separate people. He has demanded that that be the case. I will say far too often, it's not the case. And with far too many Christians today, they don't want to be a separated people. They would rather be just like the denominations around us. But God demands that we be a separated people. That every dispensation he's required says these three things: separation, exclusiveness, and holiness. When you look at the patriarchal period, now what is patriarchal? What does it mean? Father rule. The AL at the end, patriarchal, means pertaining to, and so it's pertaining to that period of time in which the father rules. What is that? The head of the family, the father, would serve as a priest to his family and offering sacrifices for their family members, and he would serve as the prophet of God in relationship to telling them what God required, teaching the family what God required of them. That's the idea of a patriarchal system and the patriarchal dispensation. Just as a review from back when, how long did it last?
1,500 years.
Well, try a little bit more than that. Anybody want?
1,800.
No.
Today, ballpark there.
About 2,500 years. Now then, that's for the, as we studied at the time, it continued on for the Gentile world until the time of Christ, which would be about 4,000 years. It ended for the Jewish people who went under the law of Moses. But in that patriarchal system, that family religion, it was the duty of the father of the family, or the head of the family, in essence, to make sure that the family remained faithful to God, that they remained righteous or holy, separated to God. Now then, just as with all systems, or during all systems, they didn't always do that. The majority of them failed. That's why during the days of Noah, it got so bad that every imagination of man's heart was only evil continually. And only 8 souls survived the flood. Then you have the Mosaic period. The IC at the end, that should not be Mosaical. The IC, Mosaic, means pertaining to. So it's pertaining to Moses. That was for the Jews, basically exclusively. How long did it last?
1,500.
How many?
1,500 years.
1,500? Okay, that's 1,500 years is right. A little bit of subtraction would have told everyone. If had about 4,000 years for the patriarchy, but Jews were only under at 1,500. What does that leave you? Or at 2,500. What does that leave you? 1,500. That's when Moses accepted, or he went up to the mountain and received the Ten Commandments, and you have thus the law of Moses becoming a system for the Jewish people. It was a national religion, the nation of Israel. But they were to maintain a separation between them and all the other nations. The Christian religion then, or dispensation, started when Christ, and more specifically after he died and was raised and then ascended back into heaven to sit on David's throne, or God's throne. And then on the day of Pentecost, that law then going forth from Jerusalem, it became an international religion. It embraced all nations. As Jesus in that Great Commission, as recorded in Acts 1 and verse 8, that it was to begin they, the apostles, were to be witnesses unto him, both in Jerusalem, that's where it began, then spread into Judea and Samaria, which we would see happening in Acts the 8th chapter, and then under the uttermost parts of the earth, and see that in Acts 10th chapter. And so it became a worldwide religion. But under that religion, God demands that his people be a separated people, or the church be separated from the world. And so our book starts out with a separated family. And we see that really beginning with Noah and the days of the flood. As we mentioned, during that period of time, God said that every imagination of man's heart was only evil continually. Just as an aside, we think it's bad now. There's still a lot of righteous people. And then there are a lot more that have been influenced by the principles of the Bible, even though they're not Christians. They live a good moral life overall. Not Christians, they're not saved, but yet they have been influenced by Christianity to live that moral type life. Here, everyone, the only thing they can think of is evil. And we think we have it bad. Our nation was founded upon the principles of Christianity, as it's referred to, the Judeo-Christian values. But God saw that Noah was a righteous man. And so he told him, instructed him, build an ark. He told him the dimensions of the ark. And that thing would have been a huge, huge boat. And told him the wood to use. Go for wood. And Noah did what God said. And during those 120 years in which God was giving people time to repent, they didn't. Noah continued building the ark and showing them what's going to happen.
So we think
There is that aspect. There's also the aspect that Noah saved everyone he was supposed to save. Because God told him this was to be for the saving of you and your family. It wasn't to be the saving of anyone else. So it was, Noah, this is to save you and your family. He saved everyone he was supposed to save. Well, every imagination of their heart was only evil, continually. So while in a sense there was no one else converted, he saved everyone that he was intended to save. Both aspects are important to understand that. But when his family went into the ark, the rains and the floods came. And what happened to the world? Well, it was destroyed. The people and animals drowned. All of the living beings drowned. Since we're in no hurry to get through the book and this material, I'm going to take an aside here. Prior to the flood, it didn't rain. Rain was something unheard of, unknown. I also add this. I kind of did a little bit of research about how many people were alive during the time of when the flood came. Anybody want to venture guesses? Yeah, how many? About? Keep going way on up. The lowest estimates would be 500 million. The highest estimates would be around 7 billion. That's B, billion. And that's going by estimations and the age and the length of time that they lived, the period of time in which they would be able to have children, and how often they could have children, and all of those things, taking those things into consideration. That's the range. It's a wide range, but shows you how many people were alive during the time of the flood. And how many were saved? 8 souls were saved. But prior to that time, it had never rained. How did the water, how did things grow and take, get all of the nourishments, the water and everything? Well, there was a dew that came up from the ground every day that watered the earth. Okay.
Could the earth have been like a terrarium? Because it said the water's from above, everywhere. If the water was coming up.
Hold that question, because that's what we were about to answer. Because during that time, there was what is referred to as a water canopy. A canopy above or around the earth of water. The reason that people live so long, the sun could not, and the radiation from the sun in particular, could not penetrate that water canopy. And thus the damage that the sun does to us did not affect them. And could go into, I'm sure, a lot of those diseases that we have as a direct result of the sun. needed, yes, but also does the radiation from it does a great deal of damage. And that's why you see people, for example, you go outside, they put a lot of lotion on you and you get that sunscreen. Why? To try and block the sun, the radiation from the sun. Didn't have that problem then. And so people lived very long lives, 900 years.
That's one thing about the sun. It's a whole life. You can't live without it, but it'll kill you.
But it'll kill you also. It does both. You can't live without it, but it'll kill you. But at that time it didn't, because of that water canopy that was above the earth. There was also water below the surface of the earth. And so when the fountains of the deep go up into the air and meet that water canopy, it produces what? Rain. God began the flood by bringing that water and all of that from under the earth and going up into into that water canopy, and all of that water then starts coming down as well, and that's why it could rain so long. It also dissipated that water canopy. Now, does that answer the question that you were asking? They did not know what rain was. They had never experienced it because of that water canopy. It would have been like a huge, what's that word? Terrarium. Right, a greenhouse. Would have been a great greenhouse type situation where temperatures would have been basically a universal 70 degrees or thereabout from our standpoint. Wouldn't be going up, wouldn't be going down a great deal. An ideal situation to live in. But with all of that water and all of the flood, all of the people died. All of the plants, all of the animals, except those that were in the ark. And thus, God separated Noah and his family, the 8 souls, from the rest of the world. And they were saved. The rest of the world was lost. They died in the flood. And so, as Peter states in 1 Peter 3 and verse 20, Noah and his family were saved by water. They were saved from the flood. They were saved from that destruction of God by water. And then he says, he likens baptism to that, salvation by water. It says that baptism now saves us even as it saved Noah in the long ago. But you see that idea of a separation beginning specifically more at that time. As we come on down through history, not only do we find Noah, but then we come to Abram. I got Abraham, but at that time it was Abram. Genesis, the 12th chapter, verses 1 through 3. The Lord said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, into a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and it shall be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. The statement is, get thee out of thy country. That's the command that God gives him. Now then, he elaborates on it. From your kindred, from your father's house, from the land that you live in. You could say, and as our book does, he had to give up home, loved ones, friends, way of life, customs. Why? God wanted to separate Abraham or Abram from the rest of them. There was a separation that needed to take place. Get thee out of thy country. Why? Well, later on we see they were filled with idolatry. Think of Laban and his house, and they had household idols. Idolatry was rampant during that time at that location. And so God said, Abraham, I'm going to get you out of that situation. Leave that area. Leave that country. Now then, Abraham is an example in Hebrews, the 11th chapter, one of those great men of faith, because he was willing to leave his home. How many of us would be willing to do that? Here's where I grew up. Here's where all my family is. Here's where everyone that I know is here. My possessions are here. My house is here. Leave it. That's what God says. Would we be willing to, or would, oh, but, you know, I shouldn't have to leave all these things. No, leave. Abraham was willing to do that. He turned his back on all his former life, the entirety of it, in order, of course, to serve God. He became a separated man. Well, you know, look at today. How many people question God? I mean, look at how many people just simply reject God. So to question God would not be all that uncommon. I mean, just look, as I say, look at today. Stupid, yes. You can say that it is stupid, but it happens all the time. Tim?
For every great man like Abraham, there's a second.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk about when we do something like this. Well,
What about that wife?
Your husband comes home and said, "We're leaving." Where?
I don't know.
No clue.
Yeah,
She did.
and she was willing to pack up and leave and go with him. She was willing to support him in what he was doing, and the decision that, you know, we don't have any record of God saying anything to Sarah specifically, at least not that I know of. Could he have? Well, yeah, but it doesn't record anything. God spoke to Abraham, or Abram. And Abram goes in and tells his wife, you know, not much detail.
That was a peculiar conversation that the angel had, that Sarah overheard and sent behind. That was kind of a peculiar situation.
Well, that comes quite a bit later.
Yeah.
But I thought you were going to say for every Abraham and his faith and willingness to obey, there's probably 1,000 or maybe 1,000,000 that won't.
That's for sure. Brother Rice told the story about he came home and told Beta, we're going overseas, and her response was when.
Yeah, when. And, you know, what if what if Sarah did not have the faith that she needed? And she could have said, no, we're not going to do this.
But they had the custom of knowing of the patriarch. He was the head.
He was the head.
The one that stood between him and God. And I believe they understood that.
They did. They knew that. He was the patriarch in that family, and he, in that sense, he would have made the decision. But even in a patriarchal system like that, how many of the wives, the old joke, the man says, I'm the head of the house, and the woman's over there, yeah, I'm the neck that turns the head. Probably not as, it's certainly not like today. Then the husband's say-so ruled. But, well, Mosaic law did as well. Historically speaking, the nations round about them, the women from those nations wanted to get to Israel, wanted to become Israelites, because the rights that women had under Judaism was far greater than anywhere else in the world. And for these feminists to come along and basically convince that Christianity oppresses women. No, it freed women. Judaism freed women far more than anything else. But even in that type of a situation, if the family is not supportive, it's going to be difficult. Have you ever heard someone of nagging someone? If they didn't want to go and they objected to this, you think that there wouldn't have been a lot of nagging going on? I'm not going to make any comment about that, because I know Denise has to put up with it all the time. But it shows the faith of Sarah as well, is the point. She had a great deal of faith as well. Because as they say, Abram comes in one day, we're going to move. Where are we going? I have no idea.
Mentions her faith in Hebrews 11:9.
It does, along with 1 Peter 3 and other places. But she had to have a lot of faith. But what was the reason for it? To separate Abraham so he could remain faithful to God. If he remained in that land that he was in, with family and friends and all of that, maybe he would have remained faithful, but it would have been a far, far different situation. God was able to separate him from that, and thus he becomes the father of the faithful. He did take Lot. His father went to a certain degree with him, not all the way, and he died apparently as they were going. But Lot did survive, and he, just to continue to make the point, after Abram and Lot separated in Genesis 13th chapter, the herdsman between Abram's herdsmen and Lot's herdsmen. They were having a conflict. And so Abraham called Lot in and said, we're brethren. This shouldn't be taking place. Here's the land, one area. You choose it. I'll go the other way. If you take this way, I'll go that way.
You're basically giving up his promise.
He was giving up part of his promise to allow Lot to flourish. Lot does what? He looks, oh man, look at the feeding ground and the beauties of this area. That's going to be marvelous for my herd. I'm going to pick over here. You did? I don't even remember that one. No, years ago. But he chose based upon the worldly situation. And what happened to him? Well, we're told that the wickedness of those people where he lived vexed his righteous soul every single day. He was miserable. How many family members did he lose? He lost several. And as God was taking them out, an angel taking them out of that area, he lost his wife. No, Lot. Because Jesus would say later on, remember Lot's wife. Why? Because she looked back when she should not have. And because of that, she was turned into a pillar of salt. And then you see the further degradation of Lot's family when they finally escaped to this mountain area, and his two daughters say, well, our father doesn't, there's no woman here, we're not married. You go into to Dad and lay with him tonight, and I'll do it tomorrow night, and we'll conceive from our father. Incest. Why? Because they had been so perverted by that wicked generation that God destroyed. Now then, having said all that, go back to Abraham, and he's in this area where it's idolatrous, and God is saying, I'm going to get you out of that. What if he had not done that? Would Abraham be considered the father of the faithful today? We don't know. But I guarantee you it would have been much more difficult for him, even as it was with Lot. So next, you have a nation, a separated nation. This has reference specifically to the Israelites. God called the Israelites who had gone into Egypt to escape a famine. There were about 70 souls that went there, and they grew into a great nation as far as number is concerned. Again, the range of the number of people who about 70 go in, and anywhere range from 2 to 5 million come out. It wasn't just a small little handful of people. You're talking about millions of people that come out of Egypt. But why? Why not just stay in Egypt? I mean, what was wrong with Egypt? Well, they were slaves, that's true, but they were also able to eat a lot of nice food and things like that. They had to work hard. But there were 10 plagues, right? Every single plague that God brought against Egypt was a direct attack upon an idol of the Egyptians. The Egyptians were idolatrous people. God is bringing them out. Now notice Exodus 8 and verse 20. The Lord said unto Moses, Rise up early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh. Lo, he cometh forth to the water, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord, Let my people go, that they may serve me. What were they doing in Egypt? Were they serving him in Egypt? Why? Because they had all these idols to worship. That was a part of the culture there. And so you let my people go. Why? To serve me. Not to serve the Egyptians, not to serve the idols there and all of their multitude of gods. Not to serve the riches of Egypt. Separation became essential for, as our book points out, for their religion. Because it was in direct conflict with everything that Egypt was about. As you go into Exodus, the 20th chapter, and if you don't know what that chapter is about already, well, you should have, or you should know it. Exodus 20th chapter is when God gives the 10 Commandments. Begins, Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Why? Well, why begin with that? Why is that so essential to think of? Because back in Egypt, they had many gods. They could worship any of them and all of them and serve those gods. Now then, that's different. You're going to be different from them. You're separated from them. You're not going to worship their gods. You shall have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. Thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them. Notice that? What did we read back in that in chapter 8 and verse 20? Let my people go that they might what? Serve me. Here he's saying, here's all these idols that you were serving. You now need to come out and serve me. And no other God. You are not to bow down to any of these idols of Egypt or anywhere else. You serve Jehovah and him only. He says, For I, the Lord thy God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, showing mercy unto thousands of them that love me and keep my commandments. Those first 2 commandments, direct result of separating them from what they had been in for centuries. They had been in Egypt and they had grown accustomed to their idolatry and all that was associated with it. And now then God is saying, first, Pharaoh, let my people go so they can serve me. And remember Pharaoh's response? Who is Yahweh that I should listen to him? In other words, we've got all these gods. Who's Yahweh? or Jehovah? Who is he? I don't know him. Well, he learned, didn't he? He learned the hard way.
Jesus said that was the first and greatest commandment.
To love God,
Lord, all your heart, soul, mind.
God. Your entirety of being. To love God first and foremost. But that separation was essential to their religion. And so now then at Sinai, they did become a separate people, a separate nation. Go back one chapter to Exodus, 19th chapter, verse 4 and verse 5. And God reminds them, ye have seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings and brought you unto myself. Now therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, notice this, then ye shall be a peculiar treasure unto me above all people, for all the earth is mine. You obey me. You serve me, God says, and you will be a separated people unto me. In 1 Kings 8 and verse 53, for thou didst separate them from among all people of the earth, to be thine inheritance, as thou spakest by the hand of Moses thy servant, when thou broughtest our fathers out of Egypt, O Lord God. You separated us, a separated people, a separated nation. Okay, Dale?
Kind of figure for 2.5 chapters later, maybe he got idols, women of the Lord. You go right back into what he is.
You're talking about in 1 Kings.
Chapter 11. Chapters later.
They did not remain faithful to God. That's true. They did bring in the idols of all the nations. That's true. They did not, and we'll kind of get to that, they did not maintain that separated aspect. God, though, did separate them from all the nations. And he says, if you will serve me, I'll bear you on eagle's wings. You'll be a peculiar treasure unto me. What a wonderful idea that we will be God's treasure. You know, we think of, here's a treasure, something that is so valuable. And God is saying, that's what you will be to me if you will remain separated to me and worship me. Well, Andrew's about to ring the second bell, so we'll stop there and pick up at that point, or willing, next time.